Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Precious Styling, and on this channel I share fashion related videos, DIYs and all of that good stuff. If this is what you're interested in, you want to hit on the subscribe button so you can stay updated whenever I post new videos. Today we'll be drafting this chic style, and without delay, let's get started. So to make this style, I'm making use of 3 yards of Duchess fabric. I'm also going to make use of bra cups. I'm making use of this zipper. I'm going to use this for embellishment. I'm also going to make use of this fastener, and I'm going to use the required things for drafting. So let's begin. So I realized that the lengthwise grain of this fabric is rather taut, so I won't be cutting this the usual way. I would be folding my fabric along the crosswise grain because this has a little bit of stretch to it. So I'm going to be cutting along this line, and this is something you need to put into consideration if you're working with a fabric that has pattern, or you're working with a plain fabric like this. You want to take into cognizance the grain your fabric is going to be placed on, because it can affect the total outcome of the outfit. You know, it could make the fabric, the style look unflattering to the body figure, so you just have to put this into consideration. So I just wanted to make a note on that. So we'll begin by cutting our lining, and I'm going to be cutting this lining along the non-stretchy part of the fabric because I want the lining not to stretch at all, but the main skirt would be cut along the stretchy part of the fabric. So I'm just going to go below the hip line by 3 inches. By the way, I'm using this pattern we drafted earlier in one of the previous videos. You may want to check that out. So that's the pattern I'm using. I'll be leaving a link to that video in the description box. So I went down by 3 inches below the hip line, and I'm just going to mark that there with my chalk, and I'm going to roll a straight line to connect both points together. That will be where my lining would stop. The lining of the skirt will stop. It's just going to be a short lining at the end of the day. So I'll bring back the pattern. I wouldn't want to cover up the dot lines by sewing it. I just want it to look dotless, so I'll be covering up the dots this way, and I'll place it on the fabric, and then I'll trace out the outline of this and cut it out. By the way, this pattern contains all the allowances we need to make this dress, so I wouldn't be adding any other allowance. If you observe the pattern, you would realize that I didn't give a zipper dart on the waist of this pattern, but I'm going to do that on the fabric itself, and I'm going to come in by 0.5 inch at the waist. I have also marked where the zipper is going to stop, and I'm going to connect a slant line from one point to the other. This would eliminate the zipper bulge. At this point, we're just going to cut everything out. In order not to mix up the pattern, I'm just going to make notations on the fabric. This right here is the center back, and that there is the side back. For the front lining, we're going to modify the pattern, and we'll do this by taking in the zipper allowance. We'll just fold it this way, ensuring that the length of the lining has additional 3 inches below the hip line, and we're going to cut similar way we cut the back, and that would be our front pattern for the lining. Please note, we're cutting this on fold. I didn't add any further allowance because this pattern already contains all the allowances we need. Now is the time to draft the pattern for the main skirt. From this point, we're going to further modify this pattern using slash and spread method. So right now, I'm going to come down from the center back by 4 inches. I'm also going to come out at the side back too by 4 inches. And I'm going to, the essence of this is to roll lines and connect lines together, because I'm going to be cutting this, I'm going to be slashing it, you know, and spreading it and on another pattern in order to create little pleats. So I'm going to go down by 1 inch. The difference between the each slash is going to be 1 inch, so I'm just going to go down by 1 inch, and I'm going to go about 6 steps downwards, each representing each split along the way. And I'm going to do that on the other side of the pattern and connect all the points together in straight lines. Just watch what I'm doing so you can get a hang of it. So right now I'm just securing the dart with my sellotape. Before I start slashing, I just want to define the zipper dart slant, and I'm just going to do that. I'm taking cognizance of the one I initially took on the lining, and I'm going to begin slashing along the lines I drew earlier. I would number this so I don't jumble up the sequence of the pattern after slashing this. Now take up another pattern paper and place these pieces on top of it. I'm going to be leaving a space of 1 inch between each of these pieces I've cut. I'm going to be leaving that, and each of that 1 inch would represent the pleats that I'll be making on the skirt. So I'm just going to secure this with a tape. I'll secure each of the pieces with a tape this way. Just arrange it according to the sequence it follows. This is what I'm just doing. Now that we've arranged the pattern this way, we're going to cut out the outline of the pattern in the same fashion, only that this pattern is now elongated as opposed to the previous pattern. Right down, this is the new pattern. The slash and spread has elongated the pattern to accommodate the pleats we'll make later on. So we're going to transfer this to our fabric. I folded my fabric in two and I placed the skirt pattern on the fabric, and I'm still going to modify this pattern. This line right here is my knee line, and I cut that at 41 inches. However, my client's knee line is at 36 inches. So we're going to make that 36-inch mark on both sides of the fabric. That would be our new knee line, and I would go further to trace out the outline of this pattern on the fabric. Now that we've traced out the pattern on the fabric, I'm going to take out the pattern and draw out the hip and knee line. This right here is the hip line, this is the knee line, and this is the waist. I want the knee line to be somewhat taper, so I'm going to come in by 1 inch at the knee line. I'm going to come down 1 inch below my hip line, and I'm going to connect that point to the point I marked at the knee line. At the center back, I'm going to come down 1 inch below the hip line also, and I'm going to also mark 1 inch at the knee line, and I'm going to connect those points together because I want this skirt to fit very well at the back. So I just brought the camera into focus. My client's full length is at 57 inches, but I want to add 3 inches to make it more longer. So from 36 inches, which is our knee line, I would add 24 inches to make it 60 inches. We'll mark 24 inches on the other side and connect both points. Depending on how flared you want the gown to be, you can add additional inches to the hemline and connect it to the knee line. However, I just added about 2.5 inches and I'm going to connect that to the knee line. So I'm going to give it a little bit of flare, but not too much. I'll come up by 1.5 inch at the hemline, give the base a curve, and I'll cut it out. Remember, our slashes stopped at the hip line, so you want to notch that area so you know where you're going to stop your pleats. You can't go wrong with notching. Just notch all the areas that you know you would need to identify where your slash begins and stop. Matter of fact, I would use the pattern as a guide to notch all the areas we slashed. Now to cut the front pattern, I put my fabric on fold and I placed the back pattern we already cut on the front pattern, but I brought it out with about the inches we took as zipper allowance so that the front pattern is actually smaller than the back pattern. So I would use the outline of the back pattern to cut out the front pattern. And we're done drafting the skirt. Now to draft the top part, I already have my starting line. I placed the tape on the starting line and marked 14 inches, which is the shoulder to waist. I will also mark the shoulder to chest, which is at 8.5 inches. I would mark the shoulder to bust point, which is at 10.5 inches. I would mark same on the other side of the pattern paper, and I'll connect all the points in straight lines. That's the chest, the bust, and the waist. We would mark our shoulder span, which is at 14 inches. 14 inches divided by 2 is 7 inches. The neck is going to be wide by 5 inches. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5 inches, and it's going to be deep by 2.5 inches. And we'll use a curve to create the neckline. Now from the shoulder point we marked earlier, I'm just going to connect that to the chest line and we're going to create our armhole. To determine how deep your armhole is going to be, you're going to divide your bust circumference by 6 and you're going to add 1.5 to that. My client's bust circumference is 36 inches, divided by 6 is 6 inches plus 1.5, that gives 7.5 inches. But first things first, we're going to go down by 1 inch to give the shoulder a slope, and we're going to connect that to the neckline. And from the end of the slope, you are going to go down by 7.5 inches, which is going to be your armhole depth, and you're going to mark that. My 7.5 inches falls at the chest line, so that is fine. That's going to be my armhole depth. Now you're going to get the middle of that 7.5 line, and the middle is going to be 3.75. You'll mark that, and then from the midpoint you'll go in by 0.5 inch. At the chest line, you are going to mark your bust circumference divided by 4. What I'm working with is 9 inches, and I'll just put a mark there. Now connect that point to the 0.5 inch we took inwards up to the shoulder slope. Now we're going to create our dots. Our bust span is 8 inches. 8 divided by 2 is 4 inches, and I'm going to mark that on the bust line and the waistline. Now roll a line to connect both points. At the waistline, come out on both sides of the dot lines by 0.5 inch and connect it to the bust line. So we begin by imputing our body measurement, and we'll start with the bust. My bust circumference divided by 4 is 9 inches plus 2 inches allowance, and that will be at 11 inches. I'll just mark that there, and we'll proceed to the waist. the waist circumference divided by 4 is 8 inches, and remember we are going to replace the darts we took earlier, so I'll add 1 inch to that, making it 9, and I'm also going to add 2 inches allowance to that. I'm going to connect the points in a straight line. I'm going to be taking a bust dart of 1 inch because the shoulder to waist measurement of my client is different with 1 inch than the back, and I'm going to be connecting that to the top of the dart line. Now I'm going to look for a way to close up all these darts because I wouldn't be stitching them up. I want the bodies to appear dartless, and I'll do this by means of dart transfer, or rather dart manipulation. So I'll just cut out the waist dart and I'll cut through the bust line, and I'll use the upper part to cover the lower part, and I'm going to secure that with my tape, and by that means we have covered up the side dart, and I'll proceed to cut out the whole pattern. We're also going to cover the waist dart, so I'm just going to put the pattern on top of another paper, and I'm going to secure this together with my sellotape, and I'm going to transfer the waist dart to somewhere around the armhole. So just watch what I'm doing. Now I'm connecting each of the dart legs to that point I marked at the armhole, and just like we covered the side dart, I'm going to slash through one of the dart legs and use one part to cover the other part, and I'll seal it up with my sellotape. And following the pattern, I'll cut out the excess. You would realize that we have some shortage, and we'll make up for that by putting a paper underneath and following the pattern and cutting it out. I'm not so explanatory on this part because this isn't the main focus of the video, but if you want a dart transfer analysis video, leave a comment and I may do that. To cut the back pattern, I'm drawing these lines of 1 inch that represents my zipper allowance. And before we begin to modify the front pattern, I just want to cut the back using the front pattern. And I'll just place a paper underneath it and use the front outline to cut out the back. I'll trace out the outline and go in 2 inches from the armhole, and I'm going to modify the neckline, and at that center back I'm going to go up by 2.5 inches, and I'm going to connect that point that we marked to the other point, and that would create our neckline. This is what my client wants replicated at the back. Now for the front pattern, I just marked 1 inch in from the center front, and I'm going to connect that to the shoulder, like the neckline at the shoulder, and I'm going to roll a straight line there, and that would be the new neckline. And now I'm going to continue the horizontal lines, and I'm also marking my underbust line at 13 inches. Not like I'm using this to do anything, I just want to make you realize that I'm going to be putting my bra cups, and those bra cups would be ending at that line. Right here I'm just determining where the split is going to end at, and from the slant now, not the initial line, I'm just going in by 6 inches, and that is where the pleat is going to stop at. And at the shoulder I'm going in by 3 inches, and would be creating the pleats using slash and spread method. Between each pleat at the top would be using 0.5 inch, but at the base would be having 1 inch in between, and would connect the top and bottom points to each other and slash through. I would advise you number your pieces so you don't jumble it up. This is how we're going to spread our slashes, and we're going to cut it out. And don't forget to notch key areas where you need to pleat. And for the lining piece of the front, I've closed up the slashes and I'm just going to cut exactly how the pattern looks like. To cut the turtle neckline, you just measure the front neckline this way with your tape, and I have this back pattern in the same measurement as my client. The back's neck width is 3 inches, my neck depth is 1 inch. And for the front pattern, I have 4.25, and at the back pattern, I have 3 inches. So using this measurement, we can draft the neckline. So I'm just rolling a line here. I will just call this the middle, and I'm allocating one part to the front and another to the back. Remember the front neckline we measured at 4.25. You're going to mark that on the front side of the line from the midpoint, and you are also going to mark the 3-inch neckline we measured at the back section of the line. And from this point when marked, you're going to come up by 0.5 inch and leave a mark there, and you're going to connect that to the midpoint of the line using your curve. From that point, you're going to determine how high you want your turtleneck to be. I want mine to be 2 inches high, and that ends at the end of the paper. From the point at the top, you're going to come in by 0.25 inch to give the line you would draw a slant. Now from the midpoint, you're going to measure 2 inches high and 2 inches high from the point we marked at the back. Now connect all the points together this way. Because I'm going to be using press buttons, I will just add 1 inch allowance to the back. Now if you look at the style inspiration, you realize that there are kind of pleats on the turtle neckline. So I'm just going to replicate the same thing I did above. The only difference is that our turtleneck's height is going to be 5 inches here as opposed to 2 inches we had above. This is because we're going to be pleating this fabric over the initial one, and we're going to turn it over to create pleats. And I'll cut it out. And we're done drafting the pattern of this dress. In my next video, I'll be showing how I sew this up. If you're yet to subscribe, hit on the subscribe button, and I'll see you in my next video.